Hello everyone, welcome to probably the most unnecessary video I've ever made. I don't think anybody has ever asked for this. If you've been in the Malice Mizer fandom long enough or you've watched some of my videos, you have probably seen this photograph. It depicts a van with Malice Mizer written on its left wall. Do cars have walls? I have no idea actually. Anyway, the van's back is visibly heavily damaged after it got into some accident. In my videos I claimed that the person who crashed the van was Mana. Admittedly, I read this on some Malice Mizer fan site and I never really thought about verifying it. Some people doubt if the accident was truly caused by Mana. For example, one comment recalled that the band's van was driven by Gackt. A presentation titled The Probably Not Entirely Extended Lore of Malice Mizer Maybe I Suppose, created by Finn with double N, mentioned that there are some that claim that the van was crashed by Gas, the band's first drummer. So I decided to try to settle this debate. Today I will take you on a journey to find the real perpetrator of the Malice Mizer van incident. Actually, please don't take this video seriously. I will jump to some conclusions and make some assumptions, and this video will be a mess. Don't take as anything I say as concrete facts, okay? This is basically a conspiracy theory video, but about Malice Mizer. Once again, don't take my findings and my theory as facts. But first, thank you to my Patreons, Haitani, Mumblehoney, Remelia, Big Body Igor and Canary Casey. And let's get into the video. Throughout Malice Mizer's history, the band had 8 official members. Chronologically, guitarist Mana, guitarist Kozi, bassist Yuki, drummer Gas, vocalist Tetsu, drummer Kami, vocalist Gackt, and vocalist Klaha. We will go through the members one by one and try to look for any clues if they might have been the perpetrator. Let's start with probably the easiest theory to debunk, Gas. Gas was the first drummer of Malice Mizer. He was in the band for just a short amount of time. Malice Mizer was founded in August 1992. According to VKG, Gackt departed from it on exactly March 15th, 1993, and Kami joined the band 2 days later. Thanks to this knowledge, we can easily eliminate him from the list of potential suspects. Why, you might ask? Because in the photo we can clearly see Kami sitting on top of the van. Yeah, I have no idea where the rumor that Gas crashed the van came from. And so, Gas has been eliminated. Why did I say this like I'm the Squid Game announcer? In one interview, Klaha said that the Malice Mizer car is his favorite vehicle because driving it with his fellow bandmates is exciting. I'm sure it is, bro. Kami's presence in the photograph gives us time frame for when the accident happened. It must have been sometime between March 15th, 1993 and June 21st, 1999. Thanks to this, we can once again very easily eliminate Klaha from the list of potential suspects, as he wasn't associated with Malice Mizer until the year 2000. Okay, so we know Kami is in the photo, so let's focus on him now. Was he the one who crashed the van? Well, he does have something to say about this incident. In 2007, Flowers of Night, moderator of the Escape forums, posted scans of Malice Mizer's Share the Memoir pamphlet released in 1994. The pamphlet includes interviews with members of Malice Mizer, including Kami. A translation of this interview can also be found at the Escape website. Under a headline, Our Van, Kami is quoted saying, "This van has a very deep memory for us. After I had joined Malice Mizer, I had already had a lot of experience during shows with other bands. I loved this van and enjoyed taking it into the car wash if it got dirty. The tragedy happened on April 29, 1994. I heard there had been an accident and I went to see. When I got there, a cruel scene was laid before me. I can't even find the words when I remember it now. It was very sad. Thank you for all the memories. Rest in peace. So, Kami was not the one who crashed the van. He heard about the accident from someone else, and he went to see it, and that's when this photo was taken. As such, Kami has been eliminated. As you've heard, Kami provided us with the exact date the accident took place, April 29th, 1994. This places it in the late Tetsu era. Tetsu left the band after a live show on December 27th. This allows us to eliminate Gackt, who joined the band in Tetsu's place in 1995, and he did not know the Malice Mizer guys before that. We are now left with 4 suspects: Mana, Kozi, Yuki and Tetsu. By the way, while making this video I found that this photo of Gackt getting into a car holding a bag of his own vomit. This was also scanned by Flowers of Night. I don't think I've seen this photo before. You might be wondering, who is the second person in that photo? The one standing by the Malice Mizer logo. I think it is Kozi. I don't think it's Yuki. Simply by comparing Koji's and Yuki's photos without makeup, the person looks exactly like Kozi. Also, 5 days before the accident, Malice Mizer played a live show at the Rock Meikan in Tokyo, and there is a photo from that live show showing that Yuki's hair was partially dyed grey, and obviously Tetsu's hair was nothing like the person in the photo. Let's go back to Kami for a moment. As he himself has said, Kami drove the van to car washes. During Malice Mizer's Deep Sanctuary 6 reunion in 2018, Kamijo, who worked as the band's roadie during the Gackt era, talked about who sat where in the van, as reported by the Mana's Beautiful World is Forever blog. Quote, he mentioned the car they used at the time, a white Toyota I have no idea how you say that, Toyota Hiace van, maybe. He went on about the name of the car and where everyone sat. Mana's seat was behind the driver. Yuki would sit with Mana. Kamijo ended up between Kami, who was driving, and Kozi, who was in the passenger seat. The van Kamijo described is definitely not the same van that crashed. And I'm not saying this because I know something about cars, I don't know shit about cars. No idea how to distinguish a Toyota Hiace from whatever van is in that photo. I don't even know the model of that van. I looked for any mention of what the model was and I wasn't able to find it, and I don't know anything about cars or vans, so anyway. I just know that the color of the van in that photograph is definitely not white, and I know I'm a little colorblind, but I am fairly certain about this. Malice Mizer had 2 cars which they traveled in back in the Tetsu era, more on that later. So, when Kamijo was the roadie, Kozi always sat in the passenger seat in the front. Mana and Yuki sat at the back. One would think that Kami, as the usual driver, would have been the most likely person to crash the van, but we know that he didn't. The second most likely person would be Kozi, since he also sat at the front. But does it really prove that Kozi is likely the one? I don't think so. And frankly, I think if Kozi crashed the van, I don't think he would be posing next to it with a smirk on his face. I think that the person responsible for this is probably not present in the photograph. Also, in a Klaha era interview, Kozi said that he likes fast vehicles and hates to drive slowly because it's boring. You would think that someone who caused a car crash would be a bit more anxious about reckless driving. Because of these reasons, I think it is pretty safe to eliminate Kozi from the list of suspects. As we all know, Yuki is an absolute mystery of a person. He could have crashed like 50 vans and we probably would have no idea about this. The only somewhat relevant piece of information I found regarding Yuki and the band van was a Rock and Read interview, as translated by Mana's Beautiful World is Forever. We talked all over the place. going to all-you-can-eat Yokiiku in the equipment car. I think by equipment car he means the van, but because that would make sense. Also, in one interview, Yuki said that he likes taking taxis. Not much of a driver, I think. I wasn't able to find any good reason to eliminate Yuki from the list of suspects, nor did I find anything that would hint at him being the perpetrator. I decided to deem him inconclusive, but unlikely. I don't have a lot to say about Tetsu as well. We know that he did drive one of Malice Mizer's vehicles, as mentioned by Mana in a Rock and Read interview you can find on Mana's Beautiful World is Forever. But more on that in the Mana section. So, if he drove one car and Kami drove the other, could Tetsu have been the one who crashed the car in the photo? You know what, my reasoning might be weird, but I think that if Tetsu was responsible for this accident, he would have brought that up in that interview he had with Kozi, where they talk in detail about their time in Malice Mizer, as like a, hey, remember that time I crashed our car? But because of a lack of evidence pointing either way, I consider him inconclusive, but in my opinion, unlikely. It's quite evident that Mana doesn't like driving. On the internet you can find fans mentioning that he's scared to drive cars. User submitted trivia on IMDb says that Mana, quote, has a driver's license but he never really uses it because driving makes him anxious. He usually takes public transportation and he has a driver for events. Which is very based of him, by the way. I am also team public transportation. I love trains. And also buses, of course. And trams or streetcars or light rail. I think Americans call it light rail. The IMDb trivia page also mentions a car accident that Mana was in before Malice Mizer. In an interview, Mana said before Malice Mizer he and his friend were driving at a mountain pass when suddenly they couldn't turn a curve and broke through a guardrail. The car spun several times and all the glasses were scattered. Mana was in the passenger seat, not wearing a seatbelt. Luckily, he made it out with just a few scratches. Now, an accident like this, I think, is likely to make someone anxious about driving cars in the future, even if he himself wasn't driving. IMDb is a notoriously unreliable source, and some other pieces of trivia it gives him to be a little wrong. I decided to get in contact with Lily, who you might remember from my new Mana Iceberg video as a great source of information on Mana, and I got a confirmation that both of those trivia entries are true. Lily also said that when Mana renewed his driver's license in 2018, he tried to convince the officer to let him take the picture with his hair down covering one of his eyes, and I thought that was very cute. So, yeah, Mana really is anxious about driving cars, and he doesn't do it often. And it's been that way since at least 1995. Recalling his meeting with Mana, Gackt said that he was the one driving when he first met Mana. In a 1997 M-Gazette interview, Mana jokingly suggested that he would like to drive a car on a mountain ridge, but he does not have a car, to which the person conducting the interview says, "Ah, you were tired so you broke it. And even so you're troubled silly by all the things you have to do." To which Mana says, "Yeah, that's it, I'm tired, it's natural destiny." What could the interviewer possibly mean by breaking it? Like, did he mean crashing a car? I tried looking for a scan of the original interview to translate it to English, but I wasn't able to find it. Somebody posted it on the Escape forums way back in the day, but the link is dead now. Malice Mizer members used to tease Mana about his driving skills. For example, in one of the first Malice Mizer interviews, published in April 1993 in Quarter Maze, Tetsu is quoted saying, "Mana has a weak point. He never stops at the stop line. He always stops right in the middle of the pedestrian crossing." The fact that all Malice Mizer members made fun of Mana for his driving at some point is probably what led to people assuming it was him who crashed the van. Also, according to Lily, Mana used to drive early in the morning to gather up the members and roadies. All mentions of Mana driving cars himself that I could find date back to 1994 or before, other than the 2018 driver's license renewal mentioned by Lily, of course. Like, for example, in a Rock and Read interview, as described by Mana's Beautiful World is Forever, Mana recalls a funny anecdote of Tetsu driving a car with no air conditioner, and the paragraph goes like this. They had to use 2 cars to get around to venues because of the sets. Since they did not have money, they got a used car from an acquaintance of Kami. Mana went to Ibaraki to get it. He opened the door and there was a nasty odor. I will stop here. If you've watched the Tetsu Iceberg, you know the story. Now, if Mana went to Ibaraki to get the car, he probably drove it back to where he came from. So I assume he was okay with driving before that accident happened. Is it possible that Mana crashed the van you see in this photograph and the accident made him anxious enough to not drive cars to this day? It seems that since 1994 he has almost exclusively been a passenger. And do you know who was the only Malice Mizer member who did not name any kind of automobile as his favorite vehicle? Mana. Another interesting thing is this photograph of Tetsu and Kozi sitting in Malice Mizer's van. Do you notice anything weird about this photo? Tetsu and Kozi are sitting in the back. Kamijo mentioned that 3 people could fit in the front of the car, so I assume that's where Kami, Yuki and Mana were sitting at the time. As we recall, Kamijo said Kami and Kozi always sat in the front, while Mana and Yuki sat in the back. What could have possibly happened that made Mana and Yuki want to sit in the back after 1994? Perhaps, maybe they were in an accident. Call me biased because in my videos I said Mana crashed the van and you might think that I'm just trying to prove myself, but reviewing all the evidence, I feel pretty certain that Mana could have been the perpetrator. However, due to a lack of direct and reliable proof, I choose to deem Mana inconclusive but probable. In conclusion, here is my theory of what happened on April 29, 1994. Mana, and possibly Yuki because in the future he also sat in the back, were driving the van for some undisclosed reason. Their previous show was 5 days ago and their next one was in June, and we know that it wasn't an important trip as Kami was not with them, so they weren't going to a concert or anything. Mana was probably the one driving. They were in Tokyo or somewhere close to it because that's where the band was based and Kami was able to quickly get at the site of the accident. Mana and Yuki collided with something that made a huge dent in the van's left side. They called Kami and Kozi and possibly Tetsu. The 3 arrive at the site of the accident, possibly to drive the van back to one of their homes, while Mana and Yuki weren't present. Maybe the 2 were talking to the police or something, you know, explaining what happened. Tetsu then took a photo of Kozi and Kami posing with the smashed up van. Since then, Mana and Yuki are probably anxious about driving cars, so they choose to sit at the back. I think I sound very stupid. Literally the dumbest video I've made. Anyway, that's it. That's my conspiracy theory of what happened to Malice Mizer's van and who was responsible for it. I hope you enjoyed watching. Once again, please don't take this seriously, this is just my theory. I did this for fun and I hope you also had fun watching it. Again, thanks to my Patreons, Haitani, Marble Honey, Remilia, Big Body Igor and Canary Casey. Thank you all for watching and goodbye.